As you see on the signs, this is me, Moshe Berk. What we're going to be doing today, I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about me, who I am and what I've been doing over the years. And then I'm going to explain to you how the whole process works of how people produce a sound when they're singing and speaking. We're going to later talk about what are the typical problems, like sitting in the mirror or whatever. Is there any guys out there that are not from the mirror? Can you just raise your hand? Where are you from? Is there any other yeshivas here? Okay, great. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to talk about the different kind of problems. I'll show you a couple of slides. And please stay to the end. I got a nice video. This time I did it in English. Last time I had it in Hebrew. No one knew what was flying. So we're going to be doing it in English this time. All right. As you can hear, I'm from South Africa. Grew up in South Africa, Cape Town. Still asking myself what I'm doing here after 25 years. But Baruch Hashem Eretz HaKodesh. And from a very young age, I started singing in the shul choir, which is very typical in my generation, to sing in the shul choir from the age of 10. And at the age of 20, they sent me for voice lessons. And in a very short while, in a couple of weeks, I did an audition there for the opera, and I was like 20 years old, like, which is probably the average age here. And I was singing in the opera with like people that are like old, you know, like 40, 50, 60, you know. And I was a kid, I was only 20 years old, I was singing in the opera, and I sang with the South African Philharmonic, Cape Town Philharmonic, and every possible body that had a professional choir. And then I made Aliyah at 24, came to Israel, and I studied, besides yeshiva, I studied also at the Reuben Academy of Music. For anyone who's from New York, it's like the Juilliard of Israel. And I studied there 5 years how to sing and how to teach. Even though a lot of what I teach is based on my own experience from almost 40 years of singing professionally. And when I say singing professionally, from a young age, I've been singing with all the top chazanim, Moshe Stern in Brazil, and Israel Rand in New York, and Shweki and Fried, and all the chazanim I've sung with, most of them all over the world. And I studied my degree in music, and then about 20 years ago when I finished, I started teaching a lot of wedding singers. You'll see shortly Mordechai Shapiro, Ari Goldwag, Menachem Zeltzer as the choir Shira Chadashah. It was actually quite cute. In the middle of our lessons, he used to sit and write songs out while he was doing multitasking. While we were learning, he was actually busy writing out the songs for the guys to sing during the course. There's a guy also here, you'll see Shai Sachs, also brought out a CD and learned with me, and the list is endless, Baruch Hashem. Many, many people learned with me that are chazanim today, and wedding singers. And about 15 years ago, I also started working with a lot of people that, like, I presume a lot of guys here, are getting hoarse. Because sitting in a big, noisy, loud base midrash, of course, it taxes the voices. What do I mean by that? I always give this example, and I have a couple of students that just finished yesterday the course, I see here as well, so this will sound familiar to them. It's like, look at the average guy sitting in the room. Most people, 90% are wearing glasses, spectacles. Why? Because we're in front of Sforim the whole day. It's not a bad thing, it's just a reality. And sitting in front of a sefer the whole day, Baruch Hashem, ties the voice, ties the eyes, sorry, the other way around, ties the eyes. And for that, we've got a solution. There's glasses. You can go from a 2 to a -6, 8, up until 18, I believe. And then there's even surgery today. But there's nothing to help you with your voice if you're shouting the whole day. And the problem is, I don't say you can't shout, but you have to know how to shout correctly. Yes, I am against shouting. We'll speak about it in a few minutes. Because the body's not designed to sit and shout. And if you take me as an example of someone who's traveled half the world, from South America to North America, England, Europe, South Africa, obviously, I haven't seen a profession that comes anywhere close to what we guys have, three Zdorim and 3 Tefillas. You're talking of probably 10 to 12 hours a day. Okay, and that taxes the voice. Also, a little bit about me. I studied at the Cantorial Institute of Naftali Hirschtik in Tel Aviv. I obviously sang in the Great Synagogue when I came to Jerusalem about 25 years ago. And then I studied about 17 years ago in the Chazanut School, and then I became a teacher there for voice. So if guys want to learn voice as well, besides for the speaking, then we'll be able to help you with your davening as well. Bezrat Hashem. So let's get straight into it and let's talk about voice. How is it that we produce a sound? How does it work? So there's air in the room, and I take in air through my nose or my mouth, and that's the way I take air into my body. That's the only two ways, either my nose or my mouth. And that goes down my throat, and what you see sticking out here, all you guys have got it. It's called, which you probably know the name from Chutz La'aretz, Adam's apple, as opposed to Eve's apple. But in the whole world, in all the languages, they refer to it as Adam's apple because they grew up believing that Adam HaRishon ate an apple. That protrusion only happens by men, which I'm going to be speaking about in a few minutes. In that vocal box are two vocal cords that are lying flat this way. Because you cannot see it, I turn it over. It looks like in English to the letter V. It's connected at the bottom. When it's open, the air passes in and it comes down into my lungs and it sounds like this. No sound. And if I keep it open and I release a sound, no sound. So what do I have to do to make a sound? Any suggestions? Close it. It's like if a window is slightly open, the wind whistles through that little crack. Very similar to what I'm going to do with my lips now. Okay, that wasn't the sound of the cholent, it was the sound between my lips. I'm pushing air through my lips. I know, I've got to behave myself, I get out of hand at times. So, when I push the air through my lips, I get what's called a sound wave. The wave is the original air coming in and coming out with a sound. In the same way, if I play on a guitar, we've got this guitar box which is called the resonator with the neck of the guitar. And when I strum on the guitar strings, I make a sound wave. Now, if I was to cover up the hole and strum on the strings, what kind of sound would I get? Any? Very little, right? I'll try and test it out on the wall. You just hear a noise. But it doesn't have, like in a box, the ability to resonate and magnify the sound. So, Baruch Hashem, I have a lot of people that are also like big rabbis and Chavrei Knesset, Admorim, and radio announcers that come to me as well. And not everybody is very musically inclined. But with a little bit of seichel, you understand you need two things. The first thing, what makes the sound, which is the strumming on the strings. And then where the sound can go in and reverberate with inside, and then obviously come out with the full sound of the guitar. That is the mashal. The nimshal is the air passing through the vocal cords gives me my sound wave, which I made that cute little sound earlier. Then the next question is, where's the guitar box? So we all, when I say all, I'm talking about men, women, and children, have a guitar box obviously by your throat, which is where the vocal box is, the neck, the hollow of the mouth, and then we have 4 holes in our faces called sinuses, 2 underneath the eyes and 2 above the eyebrows, and I'll show you a little clip of it. So as you guys can see, there's 2 above the eyes and 2 below the eyes, which the sound needs to reverberate in. Obviously, you've heard about a guy who's got sinusitis, then it means that he needs antibiotics to get rid of the pus, whatever it is that's inside there. So the sound must resonate also there. Another place that the sound must resonate is also in the head. If you all guys put your hands up here where your tefillin goes. And now what I want you to do, while you're holding your hand flat on your head, I want you to hum. It sounds like a cow farm, yeah. Great. Menachem, go check if the milkery is ready for them. They sound like they're ready to get milked, yeah. You feel the vibrations? If someone didn't feel the vibration, we'll send you back to the factory. All this is supposed to be involved with the sound and vibrating the sound. Now, us men, we have an added quality which comes from the chest. Put your hand up here on your top button, flat here, where my tie is. And let's do the same thing. You feel that? How low can you go? Do you feel it down there? Now, only men have that. What do I mean by that? Presumably, if you're here in English, I presume most people here are from Chutz La'aretz. I don't know if you remember back then, you phone somebody's house and a kid answers the phone, and you don't know if it's a little boy or a little girl. You familiar what I'm talking about? Can I get a bit of nods, a bit of something? Great. Why? Okay, I don't know from inches, but bear with me. Are there any Brits here? Okay, great. I can speak in metric, yeah, I think it is. So the kid's vocal cord, if you can see, is 1 centimeter long. Very small. That's how it works for boys and girls. It's got nothing to do with religion or hashkafa or anything. This is how boys and girls' vocal cords, 1 centimeter long, from here to here. And then when the kid makes a sound, it only comes from the head. And it sounds very angelic, and it sounds like this. Shalom Aleichem. That's how children sing throughout the world, if it's from the Chinese to the Eskimos to the Brazilians and Australians throughout the world. Every child sings like that except with Haredim. What am I talking about? We'll start telling you in a second. So basically, that's how children are supposed to sing. What happens to us men when we reach bar mitzvah, adolescence, is that the vocal cord grows from 1 centimeter to 2. And so too does the vocal box grow accordingly to accommodate the fact that the vocal cord got bigger. That doesn't happen to women. So when that happens, then we also get this quality from the chest, which I call the bass. And the culmination of the head and the chest together gives you your adult voice. Now, why did I pick on the Haredim? When I grew up in Cape Town, there wasn't much Yiddishkeit, but at least the boys and girls, most of the Jews, learned in the same Jewish day school. Now, you might remember it, if anyone went to a regular day school, that the teaching profession is predominantly women. 70-80% are women. Because men normally are in business, or doctors, or accountants, or lawyers, whatever it might be. And if you followed what I've just said a minute ago, the kid's voice is that much closer to the octave of a woman. So when a kid hears a woman teach the whole day, is automatically emulating her octave. And there was no one horse in our school. But what happens in the Hasidic Cheder or whatever, is you got a man. Now let's say his voice is fine, but the fact that he's in a lower octave, automatically these kids get caught into the throat and into the chest that's not even supposed to be there yet. I had a kid come to me about a year ago, he was like 8.5, he said, Shalom. Hello. Like Ben Zoma, you know, like so. I couldn't believe it. Why? Because that's what they're hearing. They're hearing the men, they're Rebbe the whole day. They're learning Chumash, Mishnayos, Gemara, eventually davening, and they get them. I see a couple of Hasidic guys here. Remember when you were a kid, they got you to shout, you'll take kavona, and you got a toffee or a sticker, and you get so many kids that are hoarse. So what I did was, now what happens to those kids? They grow up with nodules, and we'll see them in a few minutes, nodules and polyps and cysts, and a whole array of different problems with their voices and their hoarse. What happens is he goes through Yeshiva Ktana, Yeshiva Gedolah, he gets married, he sits in Koilel for a couple of years until, miteva devarim, he can't stay sitting in Koilel the whole day, and he has to go out and make up a bit of a parnasa. Doctor, lawyer, accountant, he's not going to become, presumably. He'll become a Rebbe. That he knows. Gemara and Chumash he knows. And he starts teaching in that. And he comes in with his hoarse voice, and he has an influence on the next generation of kids and turning more and more and more of them into toads. And that's a reality that Baruch Hashem, I made a great panos out of it over the last 20 years. But what I decided was to grab the Rebbe like the snake by its head and deal with him. And what I did was, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I opened up courses. In fact, up until 2 years ago, I was the only person in Israel, as far as I know, that was actually recognized as a speech therapist through Mouchedet and all the Kupat Cholim, and they were able to get back money back then. I had actually a Chaveri Knesset who said to me, enjoy it because it's going to change. Just because you're great, but you don't have a degree, we won't be able to get money back for you. So it stopped 2 years ago, and I decided, like, what am I going to do? Because not everybody can afford to come and pay 200 shekels for a lesson for 45 minutes. So I started in 2016, Hanukkah time, I started doing these groups. And to be totally honest, I never thought it would be so successful. But between Hanukkah and last Hanukkah, I had 16 groups. And a typical group we'll speak about in a few minutes is like 10, 12 guys. And Baruch Hashem, most of the people that were there in those courses were absolutely ecstatic because I didn't believe it would be so successful. But the fact is, of course, there's obviously advantages to learning privately with me, but in the group, you sometimes get a guy shy. And the fact is that the whole group singing together, these exercises, you'll see in a few minutes on the video, it gives strength, and very often when that guy, when I'm busy correcting one particular guy, everybody's hearing the mistakes or the good points as well, what's right and what's wrong, and we learn at a whole lot cheaper, half the price, this course, and then you can basically, learn from each other. So we spoke about this whole marechet of the head and the throat and the sinus and the chest. What's the common problem that happens when I get guys that come and are hoarse? Is that they're using their throat guitar only. So I'll try to speak in inches, about 6 inches, and that's all they're using. So when you're using 6 inches, you're having to give 80% koiches to be heard in the Beis Midrash. So let's put into like a mathematical equation, 6 inches of throat times 80% of koiches gives you X. Now, if we open it up from 6 inches to 30 inches, it'll be enough that you only have to give 50% koiches, and you'll still have the same X. You'll still be heard. Now, obviously, if we open you up to 30 inches, and then give 80, well, we might get a couple of Badim Chazanim that have come out, in fact, in the course now. There were a couple of guys that came out with started with a small voice and came out with a very big voice. In fact, there's a few of them sitting here. I might actually, questions at the end, please. I've got a lot of ADD. You'll throw me off and I won't remember where I am. So I might actually get a couple of guys to talk as well. I see there's a couple of guys here as well that were in the recent course we just finished yesterday that started with a small voice and it's enlarged, Baruch Hashem. So the first issue we have to deal with is called placement. To utilize your voice properly and your whole guitar box. Verstehst? Someone said to me, verstehst, but he's having a shlof here. You got Ruach HaKodesh? He doesn't even know I'm talking to him. Don't know. The second element, which you all probably have tried, you go around the Shabbos table and the guys are singing along and you go, and you get stuck there. Why? Because you can't go up to the high notes. Why? So here's the scientific explanation. You got your throat, which is like a pipe. Imagine it 1 inch wide. The vocal box is in the middle. And now when you make the sound, it has to travel out the rest of the throat, which is called the pharynx. This is called the larynx. And at the back of the mouth is called the pharynx. And now it's got to travel out the throat to get out into the room. Now remember, it's 1 inch. Keep with me. Now, if the sound is on a Shalom Aleichem on a lower key, then what happens is that the air pressure in the throat is like 20%. And that passes out easy through 1 inch. But as soon as we go into the higher notes, it goes to 30%, ze geht nicht. Or you go up too high, and you crack. So you say, if that be the case, I must be stupid to go up. I'll rather stay on the lower notes. And that's a good answer. But songs go up. You need to know how to go up. And second of all, if you're sitting too low, you're sitting and choking yourself and sitting on your vocal cords. So we don't want that either. Just to make it a bit more graphic, it's like a pool of water. If I throw a little pebble in the water, I get small ripples. That's the equivalent of singing on a low note. That's less pressure in the water. If I sing on if I throw in a big rock, I get a bigger ripple. That's the equivalent of singing a higher note. So yet again, so what happens is, if I sing low, then I don't have the problem of the pharynx. But then I have the problem of sitting on my vocal cords. So my job is to raise you up, that you elevate out of your throat and start working from the sinuses. Once you start working from the sinuses, the sound is more geschmack. This is where we want to work from. And I'll give you an example. Now I woke up some of the people who are sleeping now. As soon as I work from the head, then the sound is more geschmack. So it says, okay, listen, I want to be able to do that. But now I'm going to get stuck in the throat. And then I'll teach you how to open up the throat from 1 inch to 1.5. It's about as much American as speaking 1.5. So we'll teach you how to open up your throat. So we've spoken about two elements, the placement. The second one is open up the throat. The third one is called breathing from the stomach, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that. And it's not because we've got a big fat stomach here that we are better chazanim. We're on the way down and the voice is still good, Baruch Hashem. What does it mean breathing from the stomach? First of all, before we talk about breathing from the stomach, I want to show you guys what the vocal cords look like. And that's why I asked the guys at the door not to let anybody, not to let kids in, because I don't want people to have nightmares at night and freak out. So now we're going to see the vocal cords. It's a little bit alarming at first, but you'll see the V, and it looks like teeth almost, two little teeth. Watch this. So as you can see, these are the vocal cords. You see that? Those are the vocal cords. And what you see going down there, that's nodules, by the way. I think it's got a life of its own. It's going off by itself. Hang on. One second. As you can see, they open and closing like little butterflies. And then when you breathe in, I cut out the volume because it's a woman. And you'll see when it's a high note, the vocal cords are longer, like an elastic band. And when she comes down, you'll see the vocal cords start moving slower and they get thicker. In a second, we'll see that now. That's when they put a camera, fiber optics up the nose, and you can see down into the thing. So yeah, she's singing the American anthem. And as you can see, it just happens to be this in America. And that's the vocal cords flapping around like little butterfly wings. I know it's very freaky, and I hope I don't disturb your sleep tonight. Oh, we've seen enough. Okay, there on the high note, it's long and thin, and now she comes down, and it got thicker. All right. So now I started speaking about the concept of the breathing from the stomach. How does it work? The body is designed that the chest starts by the shoulders and ends by the ribs. And if you've noticed, the ribs are in a state of an arch. Now down here is the kishkas, and up here we have two lungs about the size of my fists with the heart in the middle. For anyone who thought that when you tap your chest, your heart's here, you're wrong. It's in the middle here, And the bottom apex is turning a little bit left. That's the ganze Geschäft. I once went to a shiur, one of my friends, rabbi, giving a shiur on a halacha of tefillin, and he kept talking about his heart. I said, maybe by you, but the rest of us, it's in the middle, yeah. So the fact the heart is actually in the middle, yes, the two lungs, and down here we have the kishkis. Now, well before the Baal Shem Tov thought of the gartel, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us a gartel which separates us from, cutting me like a blech, from my front all the way to my back. It's called the diaphragm. Now, when we breathe, the lungs expand about 1 inch wide, one inch. Then what happens is that the natural tendency is to pop up. If I can use you as an example, please, if you don't mind, come standing next to the Rebbe here. What's your name?
Yosef Weiss.
Can we get a bit of applause here for Yosef Weiss? Now, what I want to watch here, if we want to watch Yosef's chest and his shoulders, I'm going to ask him, like at the doctor's room, to take a nice big fat breath. Watch what happens. Take a breath. Oh, someone's been learning here. Trust my luck. Out of all the guys I chose, he's learned to work from the stomach. Excellent. But take a breath like the normal person takes. He doesn't know what normal is. Is there a lot of guys like that in the yeshiva? All right, have a seat. The average guy that doesn't learn voice, what happens when he takes a breath? The chest goes up like a peacock. And that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Because you're taking the lungs into the guitar box. So like taking a guitar box and sticking a shmata inside it, you're going to mess up the guitar box to be the guitar box. And you don't want to put the shmata. So what we do is we want to take the lungs down. How does it work? Here's the diaphragm. Imagine it cutting me across to my back. It's in a state of an arch. Here where my thumbs are, if you can see, are the lungs. Now when I take the diaphragm down from arch to plateau, then it automatically brings the lungs down with it, and then they don't go up. So they expand downwards, and as a result of that, when the diaphragm goes down, it pushes on the stomach, and the stomach can't go down because of the hips, and then the stomach goes out. Watch my hands. And when I deflate, when I'm singing, I'll say it out on an S. Watch my hands. This is before the hoarseness. And this is after about a year of cholent. So that's called the corrective breathing from the stomach. And the last and final element, which is the fourth one, is called support. So we spoke about placement is to open up the guitar box. We spoke about when you go to a higher note, open up your throat accordingly. Now we spoke about breathing as if from your stomach as opposed to your chest. And the fourth element is called support. Whilst you guys are busy sitting watching me, those that are still awake, let's say that you expending 20% pressure, exertion by sitting on the chair. As if there were beds or mattresses and you were able to lie down and you have a shlof here for afternoon, it's like 5%. You're doing nothing. But sitting on the chair, you've got to hold yourself from not falling off the chair. It's a little bit more work than sitting lying down on the bed sleeping. But when you guys sit and learn, or daven, or laying, or sing, of course the pressure goes up from 20% to 70%. Where does that pressure go to? Where does that extra 50% go to? The throat. Whenever you see a guy lifting up his head, it's not out of vacus. He's trying to deal with that 50% that's getting stuck in his throat. And that's an issa. Why? Because in the same way as you don't want to breathe from the chest because it's the guitar box and you bring the breathing down to your stomach, so too is this part of the guitar box, and not less important, here's the motor. So you don't have that pressure here and you bring the pressure down to here. Before I forget, I remember I got to show you the clip of the diaphragm in action. So you understand, it works like a parachute.
Use the diaphragm.
The diaphragm is a thin, dome-shaped layer of muscle and tendon that separates the abdominal cavity from the chest cavity. It gains its shape from the attachments and from the organs that surround it, especially the heart, lungs, and liver. The diaphragm attaches at the costals along the lower rib cage, high in the front at the sternum, and deeply in the back along the spine. The diaphragm also attaches to itself via a central tendon, making.
And as you can see, it's an absolute mechitza between the thorax, the top cavity, and the stomach. And it moves up and down like that, and it brings the lungs down with it. That's the breathing. Let's get back to the support. So as I said, as soon as we start davening, automatically there's much more pressure in the body. And we said it goes to the throat, which we don't want, because this is part of the guitar box and here's the motor. So what we do is we bring the pressure from the throat down to the stomach. And essentially, what's happening is that from the chest to the head is the guitar box, and what has to work is the stomach. This is the motor. And that's basically the four elements of Pituach Kol, the singing. Placement, opening of the throat, breath, and support. Now, how do I work? I take those elements and I split it into two stages based on my perush on the word Pituach Kol. So you can go back and say, learned a little bit with the finger here today. The first perush is called Liftoach, to open. And the second perush is called Lefateach, to develop you. Let me use this gentleman here. Yeah. What's your name?
Oscar Schwartz.
What?
Oscar Schwartz.
Oscar. And let's watch Oscar. We're going to ask him to do a sound like I did earlier, like a little boy. Didn't quite work, right? You sound like a little bit of horse. Next time I'll bring a sugar cube. Try that. A little bit higher. Yeah, can you? What can you notice here? He's so hoarse that he can't actualize his boy voice. Now, before you let him sit down, as we spoke about earlier, all children were supposed to sing in that high voice. Now, when I put him, I'm going to try to put him up again into that high voice. Let's do it again. No, you almost got it the first time. Give him a round of applause. He got it. Yeah. Go here. Now, how did I know Oscar could do it? Because it doesn't matter if he's American or Chinese or Hasidic or Sephardi. Every boy throughout the world uses that voice. It's like a building. I take the building and I put it aside, the house, and I deal with the foundation. That's the boy's voice. I strengthen it and correct it. And then when I put the full voice, the house, back onto the foundations, it's sitting good. So when I did that to Oscar now, what did we do? We took his chest out of the equation, and now he was 8 years old again. I mean, it doesn't look like it, but he was 8 years old. And what did they give me? It gave me a high placement and a relaxed throat to some extent. We've got to do a bit of work on that. But it gave me a high placement and a relaxed throat, and that's what I call liftoach. Then, lefateach, to develop you, will teach you how to breathe from the stomach, like this gentleman already knows. Teach you how to breathe from the stomach and support from the stomach, without then, by reintroducing the chest back into the equation, without losing the high placement and relaxed throat, and then you'll be using your voice properly. 4 elements: placement, open the throat, breath, and support. Now, in order for this thing to work, so too do you have to do 4 things. And it's very easy to remember because I call it in Hebrew from the letter shin, 4 shins. The first shin is called shtia. You got to drink. When I perform a shweki, which has a little voice lessons, every time everyone's busy clapping and we finish the song, he turns around to Yoichi, and on the drum set there, he's got a little bottle of water, and he takes a couple of swigs of the bottle, and then he can carry on. It's imperative to drink because the Rambam, the Kupat Cholim, that is, speaks in Israel. This is not American, it ain't South Africa. Believe it or not, this is a desert. And the body's made up about 60-70% liquid, the blood, the cells, the plasma, and all that. So you've got to make sure that you're drinking. The first thing you do in the morning, what do? You go to the bathroom, right? Why? Because even though you're sleeping, your body was working. So you've got to replenish back into your body what you never got whilst you were sleeping. Before you go off to davening, drink 2 cups of water. Now I know if I say to you, bring a little bottle into the mirror, it's not going to probably happen, because if you're going to run out to the bathroom, you need a GPS to find your seat again. So, but I am advocating that you do bring a little bottle and you take little sips like you saw me taking now. Not suddenly, oh, Moshe said I've got to drink 12 to 15 cups. So like at 12 o'clock you started drinking a liter down and filling up your hump like a camel. That's not what I meant. Because what's going to happen, there's like in the toilet, you got that like float. So you got those in your kidneys. And what happens if it goes too quickly up, you're going to go to the toilet, the bathroom. So, but if you're drinking slowly, little sips, you'll be able to hold into your body without having the need to go to the toilet if you drink slowly. So by the time you get up to lunchtime, I want you guys up to a liter. Afternoon Seder, the same thing, about a liter. So you get up to 2 to 3 liters, depending how big you are. If you're a big guy like me, 2 to 3 liters. A little bit smaller, maybe up to 2 liters of water. Just doing that alone will already help solve your voice if you've got issues about hoarseness. That's called shtia. The second one is called sheina. The Rambam speaks about 8 hours. The Stipler speaks about 8 hours. Knowing you guys, I'm prepared to give you a discount. I want 7 hours at night. Why? Because it says in the Mishnah Brura, in Perek Vav, with the Hilchos Yom Kippur, החזונים מתפללים כל היום, לא יאירו כל הלילה, אחרת מאבדים את קולם שאינם ישנים. You don't sleep, you lose your voice. I myself, if I don't sleep, can't sing, can't function. You have to sleep, and that'll help get the hoarseness away. If you're sleeping 3-4 hours, you're trying to be the Baba Sali or something like that, it's not going to work. Okay? Because the Taz also says, something in my Loshen, is that if you sleep too little, your learning is less effective, and your Sachar in the Oilam Haba is not any greater, which really means it's less. So don't try to be the Baba Sali or whatever it is, or Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Sleep like you're supposed to sleep 7 hours. Even if you don't come to my course, you'll see that will help you. That's the second shin. Yeah, we got him converted already. He's drinking with his bottle. So shin is shtia, sheina, and here comes the third one, shtika. All you guys that are hoarse, I don't want you singing Zmira Shabbos for the next 2-3 weeks. No davening, no laning, no nothing. If you can get your chavrusa to learn, let him read. Give yourself a break. I mean, the drinking and sleeping is for all your life, but the shutting up is for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, if you're joining the course, because the more you sing, the more you reinforce your technique, and don't allow me to come in and have a hashpa'ah on you with my technique. So it's imperative that you give yourself a break and let the voice calm down. Because a guy like Oscar, if we use him as an example, who's pretty hoarse, it's like a guy banging his head against the wall like a kalina, ba, ba, ba. So I come and I say, like, what are you doing? He says, well, we all do that, If you ever daven with kalina, it's like quite a mind blow. Literally. So what happens is, I say to you, hey, Oscar, stop. And so he stops banging his head against the wall. He says, wow, that feels, I'm a chai, it's a lot better. But the bump is still there, those nodules. So obviously, like we say every morning in Kol Yom Aseh Bereshis, so it's like if you cut your hand after a few weeks, there's no siman there, right? Because the cells rejuvenate themselves. So if you stop banging your head against the wall, then the bump, the pimple, the nodule will come down. And then of course, then the fourth element is called the shirei bite, the homework, which is on the disc. You won't know what to do with the disc because you just hear me playing the piano there. You won't know what to do with it. That's what we learn in the course. So what happens is that you practice in the course and at home in your dira or the dorms. You practice the exercises and you carry on practicing the exercises to bring you from your technique into my technique. And then that will help you, Bezrat Hashem, not get into trouble again. Now let's look at a couple of ugly pictures of what nodules and everything looks like. And then we're going to speak finally about what affects the voice. Because some people ask me about flour and all sorts of things. That's why I brought them here. The chocolate makes you hoarse. There's two major problems, before we get into that, there's two major problems that guys suffer from a lot, especially because you're from Chutz La'aretz. The one is called allergies, and the one is called heartburn. The second one's called heartburn. What is allergies? It's like a computer. When you buy a computer, how can you speak about that? No internet here in Maya Sharim. When you buy a computer, what's the first thing you do? You load up the antiviruses. Why? That you don't get hit by somebody. It's one of the hackers. Your body works exactly like that. So you grew up in Cleveland, wherever you grew up in Belgium, wherever you grew up from in London, Golders Green, wherever it be, your body got used to those allergens that were there. As soon as you change country, I even had a guy go from Canada to Lakewood, at the age of 40, suddenly became allergic. Why? Because his body got used to whatever was in Canada. Suddenly he was confronted with new things that he wasn't aware of, and especially in Israel. There's a lot of dust here, which is a desert, there's a little guy in the dust called a dust mite, which is very allergic. Olive trees, the fern trees, a lot of stuff here that makes people allergic. And what happens is, if your nose is verstopt and you're feeling like you want to blow it and nothing comes out, that's a siman you've got allergies. And there are sprays that one can take and pills you can take for allergies as well. Let's talk about the second element, which is the one of heartburn. Very big problem. I was suffering it as well, and I had to actually do surgery now, which is one of the problems I did, because my voice is hoarse all the time. Why? Because when you eat, the food goes down the esophagus, and then there's a valve called the hiatus hernia that opens up, and then the food goes into the stomach. Now, the valve's supposed to close, and then what happens is that it sits in your stomach until you go to the bathroom. But when that valve doesn't function properly, the gastric juices run up and it sits onto the vocal cords and causes irritation, and that makes hoarse by itself. One of the many things that cause it is caffeine, which is in coffee. But now that you'll be sleeping properly at night, not like some of the people schloffing in the lecture, once you'll be sleeping, you won't need all that coffee. There's caffeine in coffee, tea, chocolate, cocoa. Stay away from that stuff. Stay away from the fried stuff. Stay away from the harif stuff. That gets the heartburn going. And then there is medication. But if you're suffering from that stuff, I will send you, because most of you got Mukheret anyway, I'll send you to an ENT that I work with, Dr. Peter Friedman. And if he says that you got it, there is medication for it. But let me show you now some of the problems with what happens on vocal cords. Because it's in Hebrew, I'll translate. What you see here, these two ugly things, like pimple-looking things, it's a callus. It's called a nodule. Those are vocal nodules when the vocal cords are open, and yeah, it's closed. This is a cyst that looks more like, and you can see it here, it's hard, and it's like a pea. This is when you've been abusing your voice and shouting your head off. There's already a blood sort of clot going on here in the vocal cords. If you leave the nodules, they become polyps, which is on one side, like the cyst, and has to be surgically removed. This is what happens when you smoke. They look like schmutters. And yet again, a cyst. Now, Baruch Hashem, I've got a pretty decent track record that guys that have come to me with nodules, I have a 99% track record of getting them off without surgery. Whereas with polyps, which are a little bit more difficult, sometimes you'll see one of the guys talking in the videos shortly. Sometimes you need surgery, but I've got about a 60-70% success rate of taking off both the cysts and the polyps without having to do surgery. Now I want to show you quickly, because it is in English, what affects the vocal cords. As you can see, the first one is rest. You go to sleep. Diet, stay away from caffeine. As you can see here, sugar, good balanced diet. Hydration, we just spoke about it now, the water. Smoking. You smoke, your vocal cords look like schmatters, and then I can't help you. Now this thing here is the air conditioner. It's a great thing, but it kills vocal cords. And when you guys are sitting inside a room with air conditioner, you've got to make sure you're drinking. Don't sit right underneath the air conditioner if you can, and also fans. It kills the vocal cords, it dries them up. Make sure you lubricate it all the time, and that's why I've been drinking. This one's actually interesting about weightlifting. It doesn't look like it really applies to most of you here, but maybe. But it actually, what I apply it to, I have a lot of guys that give tiulim. So I always say to them, when you're at the bottom of the hill, say, okay, and when we get to the top of the hill, we go to see this mountain and that. Walk up, huffing and puffing, if you're like me, a little bit overweight. Get there, have a drink, let your voice calm down, let your body, your heart rate come down, and then say, okay, you remember what I spoke about down there? That's there, because it's a very bad thing to talk while you're straining physically. For example, Simchas Torah, let's take it to you guys. Going around the hakofas and you're busy shouting and singing and going crazy there and dancing, and you might not be used to it. That's a good recipe for many guys come to me after Simchas Torah and they're hoarse. Because they lost their voice, they were shouting, got caught up in the moment while they were dancing. And that's a physical thing. Of course, if you have colds and flus, you've got to take it easy. Allergies we spoke about as well. Dairy products. Dairy products are very well known for making phlegm. I mean, I've often sung with Healthcott. Healthcott doesn't touch dairy products at all. To definitely help if you're having a lot of phlegm. Okay. Is there any questions? Yeah?
Is there a way to cough properly so you don't strain your voice then?
Right. Clearing, I mean, you're getting to one of the technical things. Clearing your throat or coughing is a problem. We'll teach you how to use your voice and get it out, the phlegm, if there is phlegm, without having to cough. There's a certain technique if you have to come to the course to learn it.
Does the course doesn't work the singing, just the speaking part?
A great question. I'm glad you asked it in case there's anyone else. We got to deal with speaking and singing. Predominantly singing that brings us into the speaking. Because remember, I came from a chazanut world. I don't know about speech therapy. And then I built it into the speech, which a lot of guys are using now, and of course are less hoarse.
How come Hasidic kids have much nicer voices than regular?
I'm not quite sure, not necessarily. A lot of them sound like toads, which I referred to earlier. There are kids, I mean, I just finished now. I had a kid singing at a bar mitzvah or something this week, Ger Chosid. The guy that played the keyboard played with him a year ago, and he walked up to the father and said, well, what happened to your kid? I mean, like he was totally closed off, and now his voice is open, he sounds decent. He said, yeah, he's learning voice. There are kids. Look, Shweki never learned voice lessons. When I was in Switzerland with him, so I didn't want to embarrass him, but I told Yochi, you got to get the guy to do some voice lessons because, and they bought another CD like mine, they bought one in America. And when I performed with him in Caesarea or wherever I performed with him, so he always winks to me, says, you should know we still do the warm-ups before the concerts. Any more?
Yeah.
Hang on one second.
Says that people hear women teachers. I understood that women also get voice. So what?
Absolutely, but they get less hoarse. Yes, very much Galanot, the women that teach in the kindergarten, some of them shout incorrectly. But generally, women are much less hoarse than men because their voice is naturally placed in the head. But when they have to put on the power to shout at their husbands or then what happens is that they start shouting from the throat. But I don't work with women, so if you've got a wife that's shouting at you, Menachem will hand out his card. He's a couple therapist as well, when he's not videoing me. Yes, Mr. Glick.
Yeah. To what extent can your voice improve?
Everybody on his level, meaning the course is a very standard course. If Oscar comes to my course and he's like at a $20,000 deficit, I hope to get him into a plus 5,000. But if you come like your brother decently and you're already on 10,000 plus, then hopefully I can get you up to 60,000 plus. That sound good?
How long does the course take?
10 sessions. We schlafen now? No, I said it's 10 sessions times 100 shekels is 1,000 shekels.
How many weeks is it?
10 weeks. Every Wednesday. From next week, it's Rat Hashem before you guys go home. I want your parents to say, wow, that 1,000 shekels was really well spent. Any more questions?
There's no actual good way to do something that's tired with dancing and
Look, if you're used to, and you're in good shape and used to dancing, you can dance and sing, great. But a lot of people, like myself, that are not in great shape, when you start dancing and that tires you out. And if you're tiring yourself out and trying to sing, it's a little bit difficult. Even though there's another very famous singer, he's actually a guitarist, Menachem Herman. If you've seen him from Canada, he's a great guitarist. He also learned with me. He jumps. He's like a little guy, and he jumps the whole, very spiritual guy, jumps the whole 4 hours. But then he looks in great shape as well. Any other questions?
I was told by a voice teacher that to try to strengthen my lower voice is not going to happen.
Good question. I understand exactly what you're saying. There are three kind of voices. We have the high voice like tenor. Tenor voice is like Shweki or Health God. Then you got like Mordechai, which is a more of a baritone voice, and then you got the basses. You know, if you drink 3 liters of vodka every day, then you'll start sounding like a Russian bass. So now, if you're a tenor, you're supposed to show off your high voice. Like you're that Sephardi guy that was singing. That's what people pay money. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, I want high notes, I want high notes. Everyone wants high notes. If you haven't got bottom, that's Beseder Gamur. You're not supposed to have bottom if you're a tenor. Yes, apparently, Billy Joel says that every 10 years, I was interested, someone's mentioned to me, because I always say it, every 10 years your voice gets deeper. It naturally gets deeper, like a red wine. You don't drink it the first year. Said Wolf, you're probably about 20, right? But when you get to 30 and 40, you'll feel your voice deepens. I mean, I had a very squeaky voice at 20, but look what I sound like at 49. Any more questions from the side? Yes, let's talk about your wife.
Two questions about water and sleep. Firstly, water doesn't matter, hot, cold, room temperature.
Preferably room temperature.
But also sleep, does it matter? Some people sleep 4 hours or 3 hours a night and then make up.
No good. No good. You've got to have a proper sleep at night. There's a hormone excreted, as we know, when we sleep and we grow in. There's a couple of kids here that are just about adolescents, I see, according to the beards. I'm just teasing you. There's a growth hormone that we all know when kids sleep. When they hit adolescence, they sleep a whole lot more because they need that growth the hormone to work. There's another hormone that is excreted, I forgot the name, something with a C, that relaxes the muscles. So that, for example, if you're moving furniture the whole day, you need to have a shlof to not, when they say charge your battery, it's also for that hormone to relax the muscles. So until you get into a deep sleep, I mean, there's a lot of guys I know probably at the mirror that probably don't get to bed before like 12:31, 1:32, and I'm being generous, and get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's not good because you get woken up on the first light, and then you don't get into that deep sleep. It's imperative that you have a good night's sleep, and once you have a good night's sleep, you'll be much more alert and your voice will be in shape. Those other questions aside?
What are the main benefits, would you say, of having one-on-one as opposed to...
I get more money.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
As far as the student is concerned.
As I said, I saw you walked in a little bit later. The ability of the group, I mean, Baruch Hashem, I didn't think that I'd be able to do that. Like some guys, yeah, if they want to talk, I'd be happy if they say a couple of words. There's a few guys from the course here. But even though there were 12, 14 guys in the group, I'm able to spot everybody's problems, and I pick it out like with a tweezer. And I grab that spot and we work on it, and everybody benefits. That's the beauty of it. So if you were learning with me privately and maybe you don't have a particular problem, you'll never know about problem whatever. So it definitely has advantage, besides the fact it's cheaper. Also, maybe I just want to add on something like that. Let's say you do want to become a wedding singer. So you say, listen, let's be Jewish about it. A chaparain. I'll join the cause. I'll pay 1,000 shekels instead of 2,000 shekels. I'll learn the basic course of 10 lessons, and then I'll come to him afterwards for another 3 or 4 or 5 privately. But then you're not paying 2,000 and 2,000. You're paying 1,000 and maybe another 10 sessions. Especially if we go into the actual nusach of how to daven and everything, how to present the davening. So then you'll pay that privately. So if you want a chaparain, you speak Yiddish, right? A chaparain? A bissel. A gefilte fish, huh? So, by the way, if you guys swimming in the sea, how do you differentiate which is the gefilte fish? The one with the carrot in the head. Anyway, moving along. So, if you want a chaparain and join the course, you'll be able to do the course for the 10 sessions. And then we'll decide. There are some people here that are joining me now for private lessons. Yoni, you want to speak a bit? I'm going to use Yoni. Yoni was a guy who was very skeptic. Didn't want to carry on the course. After 2 lessons, he wanted to leave. Let's hear what Yoni has to say. A hand for Yoni.
I've been a very bad singer my whole life, and I never understood keys, and I also shout most of the day, so I was getting chorus. And after 2 sessions, I felt like I was the second to worst guy in the group. I had no idea what I was doing. In the end, I'm very aware of where my voice is at and how to speak. Even singing, I feel like I know keys better, and I understand when I'm singing how to get the voice up and how to speak with my lips forward, and I don't know, it was a very good experience. I feel much better every day.
Okay, shkoya. What he didn't say was, he started off, as I said, he wanted to leave after 2 lessons, he wasn't succeeding, and I said, Yodi, stick around, it'll work. And Baruch Hashem, he was actually one of the very successful guys in the group at the end. All right, I don't want to hold you guys back, because I know you've got to get back for Shir. Bezrat Hashem, we shall see most of you on next Wednesday, and I'll be